is God's kings and priests. Part 2, priests. You know, about a month ago I had a sermonette, God's kings and priests, part 1, kings. There's a lot in the Bible about becoming a king, about becoming a priest. As a matter of fact, there's so much in it, you just got to skim through it, get a little here and a little there. But hopefully it will make sense. But anyway, today is part 2 about God's priest. Now let's look at Revelation 5 verse 10. Revelation 5 verse 10. Revelation 5 and verse 10 it says, "And has made us unto our God kings and priests, and we shall reign upon the earth." Well, that's certainly what this earth needs, is God's people, everybody, when everybody will, hear God's words. People don't hear God's words today. They don't pay attention to God today. Oh, they think they do, but they don't. But anyway, God knows and can say things far in advance and bring to pass what He has spoken. This was written about 2,000 years ago. It's not come to pass yet, but it soon will be. And the priests in the world, the worldly religious priests, we won't even basically mention them except to say that they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to teach people God's ways, the ways of life. The ways, if you follow them, the world religion and the world priests and the world people, if you follow them to conclusion, it will end in the second death. But we'll see what God says about what's going to happen. Let's look at some things. Exodus 19 verse 5. Exodus 19 beginning in verse 5. Exodus 19 beginning in verse 5. It says, "Now therefore, if you will obey my voice," this is God, "and keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine." God owns the whole earth, all the riches in the earth, all the gold and silver, all the animals, and even all the people. But He's probably not laid claim to most people now. Only a few called. Verse 6, and it says, "And you shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, and an holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak unto the children of Israel." Teaching the children of Israel God's ways. God says you'll be a holy nation. You'll be a kingdom of priests. Of course, that's verified in Revelation. Isaiah 61 verse 6. Isaiah 61 verse 6. Isaiah 61 and verse 6. "But you shall be named the priests of the Lord. Men shall call you ministers of our God. You shall eat the riches of the Gentiles." And notice what it says here, "And in their glory shall you boast yourself." That's when you can teach people God's ways and they listen to you. And they start developing godly character and growing before God. Then we can boast about that and be glad that we've helped them, that they've come along towards God's kingdom. And we will boast about that, because that is great. Malachi 2, verse 6 and 7. Malachi 2. Malachi 2, beginning in verse 6. It says, the law of truth was in his mouth, and iniquity or lawlessness, disobedience, was not found in his lips. He walked with me in peace and equity or fairness, and did turn many away from iniquity. Of course, this is basically probably talking about Jesus Christ, but it's also talking about God's people, God's priests and kings. And he did turn many away from iniquity or lawlessness. It says, for the priest's lips should keep knowledge, God's knowledge, and they should seek the law at his mouth, at God's mouth. For he is a messenger of the Lord of hosts. And here we see that the priest should keep knowledge, live God's way. Remember this, Jesus Christ is God's great high priest. Remember that. But there's priests and under the great high priest, because he has that title and authority of being the great high priest. But God will have called servants who help rule as priests. This world needs to know God's ways. It don't know. All people claim to know God, but they don't. Genesis 4:26 says, then began men to call upon God. That was before the flood. Why wasn't they on the ark with Noah? Can you call upon God falsely, wrongly? Is the world like that today? Before Jesus Christ returned, he said, as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Yes, it's the same. People call upon God today, but they don't hear Him. They don't listen to Him. One guy asked me a long time ago, he said, what Bible do you use? I said, well, I read different ones, but I said, I've got a King James. He said, I've got the King James Version. He's a religious guy. He's saying, I get my religion out of the King James Version. Where do you get yours from? Same Bible, but two entirely different opinions. God will have civil order on earth. And we, as kings, will help rule with Him. Okay? We see that a king is like ruling over a nation, There's a difference between being a king and a priest. They bring different aspects. Ruling, cities. That's what Christ said. He said, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Have you rule over 10 cities? Have you rule over 5 cities? Who's going to rule London? Who's going to rule Lexington, Cincinnati, and Louisville? Who? God's people that are called, that are growing before God, that are overcoming. But anyway, God will have the civil order. That's the king part. The governments will come into subjection to God. But God will have people over that, His servants. God will have salvation on earth for most people. And we, as priests, will help teach people about God and all of His ways. Hold on to God and His ways that we now walk. And God will let us help and serve and teach many others this way of life that goes on forever.